Hello and welcome to another episode of Warrior Vetrepreneur Podcast. I'm here today with Trevor Greenberg. Thank you for all of my followers who have been following me on my show. Remember, this podcast is meant to inspire veterans during their transition to go out and find their identity, not the identity that the military gave them. I do want to put a plug in because I just came out with my new book, and maybe Trevor will ask about it, maybe he won't, but Speak Up, Show Up, Lead. It just came out on Amazon within the last week. I've just been starting the promotion, and so far it's doing pretty good. I really hope anybody who buys this book really likes it. But it's my story and the leadership lessons that I've learned in my life, and it's taken me a while because I'm not very good at talking about myself. So hopefully people enjoy it. Trevor, how are you today, buddy?
Not too bad, other than a little bit of spotty internet.
A little bit of spotty internet, and you know what? We'll roll with the punches, and we'll figure that part out as we go. But yeah, you're an Army veteran. You're a project manager. You do all kinds of things, but I want you to tell your version of your story, and then talk about the new thing that you have going on now.
Well, first off, congrats on the book, brother. That's big. You did that.
I did that.
That's huge.
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate it. Hard work. That one was probably the leadership books that I've written in the past. Those were actually kind of easy, but it's a lot more difficult to tell your story, and not just your own story, but the hard parts. You know what I mean? So thank you for acknowledging that. I appreciate that.
Well, and that kind of goes into, I guess you could say, my journey, because one of the things I've learned over time is, I've got a lot of those pictures on the wall behind me are all things I'm proud of, but every one of those was hard work. It was effort. They weren't one test and I'm done usually. And one of the things that I've been learning, especially, is nothing easy is worth doing. Nothing. All the hard stuff requires the effort to put in before you get the reward, and sometimes you'll never see that reward. I'll start my journey kind of about 6 or 8 months ago, because in 2024 I was laid off twice, and I started figuring out in 2025, how do I make my path? How do I get back to work? How do I do stuff? And I just started figuring out that, hey, an idea comes into my head, kind of scares me a little bit. Let's run towards that instead of running away from it. I started posting on LinkedIn. I started a consulting company. I had a couple of clients. Some didn't work out, so we parted ways mutually with no hard feelings. I started a podcast. I started different things on LinkedIn. Just anytime I've had an idea, I just roll with it and see where it takes me.
Well, tell us a little bit more about that. I mean, specifically the consulting company and the podcast. So you're a project manager by trade, and oh, by the way, not just by trade, but you have massive experience in that, and that's definitely a little bit different than being an infantryman. So tell us how you what type of things you do for your consulting business, but because like me, you have a podcast. I'd like to know a little bit more about that as well.
Well, I'll start back at the beginning, because when I got out of the Army in 2011, I was one of the first people to use the post 9/11 GI Bill on active duty, and I got my MBA with it. So I got out as an E6 infantryman. I served. I did my job. I did deployments. Had my MBA. I was going to go conquer the world. People are going to be lining up to hire me, right? That's what they tell us.
Yeah.
And my first job out of the military was working at the Auburn University Student Athlete Library for, I think it was $8 an hour part-time, to go tell athletes to be quiet.
Dang.
Worked my way up to IT support in the library. worked my way from there to working for a small specialty retailer, running their e-commerce division, then went to the VA, then started my journey in the private sector in project management. But going back to that whole thing of nothing is easy, it doesn't come. There was risk involved, yes, but there was also a lot of work of someone would give me a chance and I had to prove it. I didn't have, now I'm at the point where I can be a little bit more selective because I've earned that right with my career. But you still have to prove it every day. You still have to prove that all that stuff on the wall, everything you've done in your career is great, and that'll get you a conversation, but you've got to prove that you know what you're doing after that conversation.
Yeah, you do. And you're right. A lot of people don't lean into the hard stuff, but when you lean into the hard stuff, that's kind of when the pain starts, of course, but that's also where the magic starts to happen.
Yeah, and the thing about like the LinkedIn posting, I spent probably 4 months talking about doing it until I was on a mentoring call and the person said to me, I was like, yeah, I've been thinking about posting on LinkedIn. I don't really know what to post about. And the person told me, he's like, Trevor, you are an idiot. And he said that to me. He said, you've talked about 5 different things that are worthy of LinkedIn posts, in my opinion, in the half an hour we've been talking. So that afternoon, I just banged one out. It's been my best performing one since I've started, but it came to me. I wrote it. I just sat down, went from 1 post a week to 2. Now I'm at 3. And then I started a thing that I created called PM Monday, where every Monday I'm starting with the most basic of basic project management terms. And I break them down. And as I say, I draw them with crayons so even the Marines can understand them.
As long as they don't get eaten.
Exactly. But it's a series that I've built where it's for the people on LinkedIn who they use the project management terms, but they don't know what they mean.
Yeah.
There's enough people out there talking about minutia of project management or minutia of any industry. And one of the things I learned when I was learning Olympic style weightlifting was coaches would argue about the minutia of minor body movements and details. But then if you ask the coach, tell me about what is a clean? I've never seen one. I don't know what it is. Describe it to me. You would see their brains break. And these are some of the best in the country at this sport. And that's something I've kind of taken with me everywhere I go is just because you can argue the minutia, if you can't zoom out and explain it so a moron like me can understand, do you fully understand what you're talking about?
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think that, I believe in the KISS acronym. I teach that in a lot of my leadership programs. And for those of you who don't know that, that's keeping it stupid simple. Keep it stupid simple. And when you do that and you make it so that the experienced project managers, in your case, they understand what you're saying, but also people who maybe are new to the field or not in the field at all can understand it, then that is where you get your buy-in. Because if you try to make it so that only other project managers get it, then you're going to lose the audience that aren't as experienced or want to learn more.
Exactly. Like I was on a show with another friend of mine and he asked me, what is project management? I don't understand. I don't know. And I equated it to CrossFit and kind of broke it down like that. And he said to me, he's like, you're the first person that's ever been able to explain what project management is, because it's not just checklists. It's not just project plans. It's not all that stuff. There's a lot more to it. And it's nuanced. And if you don't know what you're doing, you miss it, because one of the things that separates a good PM from a great PM is a great PM makes it look easy. A good PM is running around frazzled, crazy, not knowing what they're doing, looking like an amateur versus looking like a trained professional.
Sure. So in your opinion, what makes that difference? Is it organization? Is it a specific or a set of tools, or what makes that difference between some of the experienced guys that are good and some of the experienced guys that aren't good?
I'm learning through time that it's the soft skills.
The soft skills. Okay.
Because you can teach a monkey how to do a checklist, how to do a project plan, how to do any of those charts and tools and stuff that we use. But it takes real nuance. And I say this all the time to people, that to be able to have a conversation with a stakeholder who has the good idea fairy coming to you, because we all know what the good idea fairy is.
Uh-huh.
He comes to you with this idea and says, oh, this would be great if we can do this. And a great PM will be able to say no in the conversation. And then the stakeholder says, thank you for your time at the end of the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. So
that's
the relationship building is what
skill.
makes that happen. Yeah.
Well, the communication, the ability to understand. Like, I'm in a master's program right now for organization development and change. And I had no idea that I've been practicing OD for years in project management, just through a lot of those skills, a lot of these communication methods that we're learning about. I've been doing that for years and just didn't even know it.
Well, and let's be honest. Let's go back to your military time. You were, I need to dig back into it, but I believe you were an E6 when you got out, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So that means you had your team lead time, you had your squad leader time, and there's a lot of soft skills that they teach you there as well. I mean, the military, if it
not in the infantry, they don't.
Oh, they don't? Oh, well,
no.
they at least, they don't even train that in NCOPD or anything like that? Okay, well, never mind then. Most people I talk to, they're like, leadership is beat into your skull when you're in the military.
Leadership is. But I used to, remember, infantry is its own animal. And I grew up in the 82nd in the Army. So, when I would always tell people as an NCO, all right, we're going to get this done. You can either say yes now and we'll get it done, or we'll go through some pain. We'll go through some pain, and in an hour, half hour, 2 hours, however long it takes, we'll still get it done, but you'll be more tired.
I've been
because we have that authority as a NCO to control the situation more.
Yeah.
When you get out and you're dealing with civilians, you're leading through influence, and especially as a PM, because I don't have positional authority over anybody.
Yeah. Well, I had a very similar experience actually as a warrant officer, being in an aviation brigade and being a logistics guy, or being in an infantry brigade and being a logistics guy. Anything that I said, I might as well have been wearing a hat with a big yellow duck on it or something like that. I mean, I had to really create buy-in. The soft skills are important there. Learning how to appeal to them was also very important, and learning how to make them think it was their idea and turn their heads toward your projects, rather than you just screaming to the masses that it's really important that you follow this deployment timeline, because they don't care if it interrupts their training to put rounds down range, or if it interrupts their hours that they got to fly their aircraft, then they don't really care about it too much, and they will put you off to the side. No, JJ's got that.
Well, we looked at you like you were wearing a hat with the duck on it, because we've never seen a warrant officer before. We didn't know. We don't even know to salute you, call you sir. We don't know anything.
That's fair. So now tell me a little bit more. So you did the consulting thing. Now you have this podcast, and it's all about project management, and you're doing it with Adam. It's not.
No,
okay, tell me more about it.
So me and Daniel Hemhauser started this show. It started as a concept and a thought of just, we both wanted to do something, and we kind of just started finishing each other's sentences about the idea of a project management podcast that talks about the real world of project management, sharing the stories, sharing the experiences, sharing the lessons learned, talking about how we handle things the stuff that's not in the books. The books are the best practices, the sterile environments, everything is perfect here, so we can make this work. Well, what happens when you learn all those techniques and something isn't perfect? So we kind of created that model as how we're doing the show. And then to make this even more fun for ourselves, because we don't have enough work to create a podcast, book guests, build all that stuff. We decided we're two trained project managers. This show is the project. So we're treating this show as a project, as two PMs would, and we're taking the audience along for the journey of how two PMs manage a project full of chaos that, I said this on our first show, we're just two idiots starting a show. We don't know anything about podcasting other than what we found on YouTube, and we've talked to a few friends.
Okay. Well, how's that journey been so far? I know you just had your first show.
Yeah, we just released our first show on Monday. It seems to be doing pretty well. We've gotten a lot of positive response from it. And I think that, this is what the community, the project management community especially, really wanted, because so many people are out there talking about, hey, this is how PMI says to do this, or this is what the book says for that. And that's great. But what about the rest of us who actually deal with these problems on a day-to-day basis and just want to hear, oh, it's not just me. Oh, everybody deals with that. Like the stakeholder with the good idea fairy. Everyone deals with those, but nobody really, we talk about it in the hallway, but you don't actually share it outside of your ecosystem.
So is that what the inspiration was behind getting this going, is to make it more easily digestible and take away the whole by the book approach to project management? Is that kind of what the whole deal is behind your show?
No, I think the whole thing goes back to that whole try hard things, because you and I have talked about this offline for months, that doing something that lives on the internet terrifies me. It's terrified me for years.
Yep.
Just doing something like this, a live interview that is going to live on the internet forever. Basement will be typing away saying Trevor's a moron. That kind of thing. It just terrified me. And, I talked to you, I talked to another mutual friend of ours, and I just decided I'm going to get out there. And it all just aligned right with the launch of the show, because you've got Adam Bird coming on next.
Yeah.
We were meeting with him for distribution of our show, and he told me and Daniel, he's like, normally it takes 90 days to launch a podcast. We launched it from inception to the first episode dropping in 3 weeks. Because we went with we've got 70% of it figured out. We'll figure the other 30 out along the way, because as PMs, we know the plan is going to change no matter what.
Yep.
Mike Tyson said it. I don't remember who said no plan survives first contact. There's, pick your inspirational quote about it, but it's all the same, that you just gotta grab it and go and figure out along the way how you make it better.
Yeah. That follows that same model that they taught us in the military, and actually Jocko Willing talks about it a lot. That whole prioritize and take action thing. If you spend too much time planning, then you actually never get started. You can get lost in analysis paralysis, and if you don't do the action thing, then you're never actually going to learn what you were trying to figure out in the first place.
Yeah, and I mean, we spend so much time, like Intel people. We've spent so much time trying to say they need to be 100% accurate, and I can't tell you how many missions I was on where we hit dry holes because we probably spent too much time collecting the intel to try and get a certain level of confidence before we went to go do the hit. And then guess what? It wasn't there because we were dealing with stale data by the time we got it.
Right.
SOCOM has it. SOCOM has proven the theory that they hit an objective, they get the intel, they process it, and then they move right on to the next one based off the intel they got on the first objective. And they can hit 4 or 5 in a night because they're just going and going and going and going with a certain confidence interval, knowing that there's 80% accuracy that this information is right now. We take it back to the talk, get it processed, get our intel guys to go through it. Tomorrow that's stale data. That's useless.
Yeah. Yep. Well, that's true. Well, but I'd like to know, what are some lessons learned from starting your consulting business and also starting this podcast, that you found along the way? Some good things, bad things, whatever the case may be.
One of the things I recently posted about this is knowing your value. You know, I've been out of work for a little bit, and one of the things that I've talked with a lot of people about is, you know, when you're kind of down on your luck, whatever it may be, professionally, personally, whatever it is, you always start to kind of throw those pity parties and the negative spiral of thoughts of, you know, what do I have to offer? Nobody wants me, you know, this and that. And sometimes you just have to sit back and take stock of, oh yeah, I have done all those things. I do have stuff to offer. Just nobody has found me yet.
Yeah.
Because it's not about where you are in comparison to anyone else. It's about where you want to go and how you want to get there and how much you want to beat your head against that brick wall until it breaks.
Yes. Well, and you know, I know you've, just because I've been talking to you now for, gosh, it's probably been what, close to a year since we started chatting.
I think it was 6 months because I was in Chicago.
Oh yeah, 6 months. That's right. But
Yeah.
it seems like it's been a while, but you know, I know for a fact that you follow this model very clearly, and that's the model of, you know, try something, fail, figure out what you did wrong, and go out there and tackle it again. And you know, that has been the consistent thing, and that's probably why, and I know you can share your numbers if you want to, but that's probably why you're meeting the right people. That's why you're having your small wins now. That's why all of these things are starting to come in line for you, in my opinion. Of course, I'm not the know all, see all, be all, but when it comes to these veterans who are transitioning, who are struggling, because what you just described is the exact feeling that these veterans have when they're going through their transition. Because you know, the civilian world is very, very foreign. It's extremely foreign. And you know, when you start looking at these job applications and stuff like that, it doesn't speak to anything that you've done at all.
Well, there's a lot of tools out there, and one of the biggest things it's changed my life was using some of the mentoring sites that are out there for vets. You know, there's a couple of them out there, and I spent the bulk of this year averaging a minimum of three mentoring calls a week, trying to meet people and talk to them. I started out with surrounding myself with PMs because that's my comfort zone. Then I realized, oh, well, if Steve over there hears about a job as a PM, it's that old Talladega Nights quote: if you're not first, you're last. You know, if
Right.
I'm not top of his mind, I'm at the bottom of his list.
Yep.
So I started saying, okay, now let's branch out to people outside of project management, which makes it even harder because now I've got to go talk to somebody about something I know nothing about. And I tell this story all the time, but I distinctly remember I was on a call with someone who works for a government agency, and you know, we both military, so we got the military, where were you, what'd you do, you know, that conversation out of the way. And he's like, all right, so how can I help you get into my organization, or explain to me why you think you'd be a good fit for my organization? And I looked at him, because this was on video, and I said, I have no desire to work for your organization whatsoever. And he just kind of looked at me. He's like, nobody's ever said that to me before. And I said, I know, because what I'm doing is I want to be one of 3 PMs you know as I'm talking to you and get to know you, rather than one of 50 that other PMs that I know, because, you know, your organization, you may not be recruiting for PMs, but you've got your ear to the ground of what people need. So if someone says, hey, we need a PM, you're probably going to be the first person to say, oh, I got a guy, I know someone. So I started doing that and branching out. And, I've been building this giant Rolodex of people. And here's where the real work comes in, is using that Rolodex for the benefit of people you're talking to. Because how many people have I connected you personally with who I've talked to and I said, JJ would be a good fit for you?
More than enough.
And but that's where the action is in this whole example. Is it's not just collect the names. We're
No.
not collecting, we build that community around us, and the statistic is, what is it, less than 3% of the population have served in the military.
Yep.
And then you want to break it down further. Okay, how many people were in the Army versus the other four branches? We'll say less than 2%, because the Army's the bigger of the four branches.
Yep.
Okay, now let's break it down to NCO versus enlisted. And then you go down to career fields. You start breaking it down. Like, JJ, you're a unicorn as a warrant.
Yeah.
And start thinking about that as, we have these skills, we have these unique set of skills, like Liam Neeson said, and we just need to understand, how do we leverage the club we're in, because we are in a very special club as vets.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that want to help. Some of them just don't know how, and some of them will give you the key to the door, but you got to kick in the door. Like I tell people, I don't need you to open the door for me. I just need you to point out where the door is so I can kick it down myself.
Yep. No, that's good. That's good. And you're bringing up some good things. So I ask this at the end of every one of my podcasts, and I know you've watched a few of them, but if you could share one thing with my audience, whether it's a success tip or something, maybe it's something about you that you think would be beneficial for them, what's one thing that you would share with my audience?
Don't quit when you're doing something just because you're not seeing results right away. So many people start something and then they don't see the results right away, and they just don't know where. Some people quit right on the precipice of seeing the rewards of all that hard work, just because they didn't see results fast enough. People always say, I want to be a LinkedIn person. Okay, well, LinkedIn takes years of constant work to do. It's not just something that's done overnight.
Right.
My co-host is proof of that. He's got a ton of followers, a massive audience, but he's told me it took him 2 years to build that. He didn't just get it overnight it's 2 years of consistent hard work. Every overnight success is preceded by 20 years of hard work the night before.
That's right. Yeah. That's sound. And not only hard work and not only not giving up, but I don't remember where I saw this saying, but oftentimes when you're mining, the day you give up, you're right above the gold. So, what he's saying is good, because if you would have just spent one more day, one more hour, one more minute digging for the results, in this case, I'm still speaking about mining, but whatever your career field is or whatever the case may be, that's you're not going to get results until you keep on digging. And whether you're doing that digging part-time or full-time, it doesn't matter. If you're looking for success in a certain thing, you're not going to see it by just giving up when it gets hard.
Can I offer one more?
Please do.
Recognize opportunity. The biggest, I've kind of learned over time that the biggest thing that can change your life is saying yes is realizing when an opportunity presents itself to you. We just recorded our shows. My podcast is Two Disgruntled PMs, by the way, and we just recorded our second and third shows where we interview each other to give the audience information about us. And one of the things I asked my co-host was, why'd you pick me? Why'd you want to do this show with me? Because he's got a massive following. He's got thousands of people he could pick from. Why a PM who's relatively unknown on LinkedIn and all that? And he said, we got along. We were talking about the same things. The opportunity presented itself. And I said, I was thinking about starting something too. And we said, let's do it, and just did it. The consulting thing. I thought I had an opportunity present itself. I ran straight towards it, took the opportunity, and it worked. And I don't know, but the idea is just opportunities present themselves every day to us, whether it's just something as simple as, oh, hey, Amazon told me this item that I've been looking at in my cart for 6 months is on sale today. Maybe it won't be on sale tomorrow. Or something as life-changing as a business opportunity like this. Just be on the lookout for these things. And when they present themselves, don't be afraid to say yes. Just out of fear of failure.
Well, since you said that, I'll take another minute or two and I'll ask you another question, because I think this is important to what you just said, and it's not easy, by the way. I even have I know you probably do too, struggle with this very same idea. How do you know when it's actually an opportunity? Because on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram, people are always trying to sell you ideas and stuff and all of that. So in your opinion, maybe this is a something for you specifically, but how do you recognize that opportunity?
Well, the first thing you got to do is do a little bit of analysis of what is this being presented to. And then sometimes it's just what does your gut tell you? What are you feeling about this? My instinct is, if it scares me or if it's something that I default to, no, that's stupid. Okay, we need to look into this more. When you jump at it head first is usually when you're like, okay, maybe we need to take a step back here and reevaluate this a little bit, because sometimes it's the Nigerian prince has $10 million that he wants to park in my bank account.
Scam.
but they're getting better with those scams. And I don't necessarily have a science behind it, which is kind of weird for me, or a process. But my gut instinct is always, is this something that scares me in terms of goes against my normal nature? Like I'm a fairly introverted person, and I'm co-hosting a podcast. I'm getting out there on live interviews. I'm saying yes to everything, because why not? What's the worst that's going to happen?
Yeah.
Oh no, someone might not like me. There's millions of people in this world.
Well, guess what? There will be people that don't like you, but there will also be people that do. And that's kind of the reality of that whole thing. But, and it's not about the ones that don't, it's about, do the ones that do outweigh the ones that don't? Because just like in politics these days, there are so many people on both sides, but then there's always a majority for each side. So you will have a majority of people that will follow you. And so this is not a venture that's going to go fall to the wayside. It's going to be a good one. I have all the faith in the world that you and your co-host, you guys are going to do awesome things, and I'm subscribed to it. I look forward to seeing when that episode drops. I'm going to be watching them. Plus, I like to watch all these interviews that you do. Your story is a pretty good one to share with everybody out in the world. But Trevor, thank you for being a guest. We've gone over that 30 minutes. And by the way, it's okay not to have a process for figuring out what's a scam and what's not. I think it's different for everybody, but I thought that was worthwhile just to show your process with that. But this has been a fun conversation, and hopefully maybe in 6 months, a year from now, maybe we can do another one of these conversations to talk about how big your podcast has actually gotten. So, yeah, that concludes today's episode. For my audience, thank you to everybody for following me on my journey from Victory Leaders Lounge to Warrior Vetrepreneur podcast and the whole 9 yards, and continuing to stay with me. I can see how much you guys are watching my stuff, and that humbles me. Make sure that when you go to any of my episodes, if you're on my YouTube, you subscribe, and also on Spotify, you subscribe. But the most important thing is, keep the conversation going. If you want to reach out to Trevor, or if you want to find out more about what we talked about, especially in this case, project management, make sure you put a comment below so that we can keep these conversations going. Thank you for everybody for following me on my journey, and we will see you next time.
Hey, one last thing. Congrats again on the book. That's huge.
And make sure you go to Amazon and look up JJ Hardy, and you'll see my 3 books on there. Thank you, Trevor. I really appreciate that.
Thanks for having me on, buddy.
Yep. Thank you.